Hello and welcome to the very first episode of 2026 of Tuesday Talks with Ruby Reese. My name is Killian. I'm co-founder at Ruby Reese and at dognutrition.ie, and I'm also going to be your podcast host. This week, to kick off the new year, we're speaking all about allergies, hypoallergenic dogs, and I really can't wait to dive into this topic. This time of year we're kept really busy speaking about all things health, and I suppose it's a natural time of the year to be thinking about changing routines and kind of self-improvement and improving your household and how things work. So it's a really natural time to be speaking about this topic too. We're kept going on Ruby Reese. I think a lot of people are kind of, getting into along with their self-care, they're also getting into looking after their dogs that little bit better, looking after their needs after a busy Christmas time. So lots of people stocking up on shampoo and conditioner and things like that. Getting back into their walks, also training treats and training on new things for all those good intentions that we have for the new year. I'm sure there's loads of you out there that are brushing up on your recall and tricks and things like that for hopefully what's going to be a lovely spring ahead. Also, of course, nutritional supplements are going crazy because it's that time of year that we're all thinking, how can we make those adjustments now to our routine to make this year a really good one? And that also obviously for our dogs. And then that kind of leads over into what we're at dognutrition.ie. We're doing loads of consultations. Typically, I suppose people are very busy coming up to the end of the year. And now for the beginning of the new year, loads of people are kind of trying to tackle all of those kind of little niggly bits and sometimes bigger niggly bits that they really want to get ironed out and get their dog's diet sorted out for once and for all. So really kept going, and there's also lots of things that we've got going on behind the scenes that are a little bit top secret, but we'll be letting you know about those really soon. And yeah, really excited to let you listen into the chat that I had with Niamh from Polite Paws. It's a really interesting topic, and I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, not always I think intentionally put out there by people, but some well-meaning ideas and concepts that might not necessarily be shown up in scientific research, and it was an absolute pleasure to speak with Niamh all about the human side. So when we're thinking about people in our households that might have animal allergies in some way, shape or form. There's a lot of people out there with a lot of opinions on hypoallergenic dog breeds, and definitely very different definitions of what that can mean. So without further ado, I'm now going to invite you to listen into the chat that I had with Niamh. Hello Niamh, how are you doing? Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me back. It's very nice to be here.
Would you do us the pleasure of introducing yourself to anyone that hasn't listened to our other podcast episodes or doesn't quite know you yet?
Yeah, so I'm Niamh. I run Polite Paws Ireland. I'm based in North County Dublin, but I kind of cover a wider area than that. And I help people by going to their homes, helping them with behavior issues. But I also love deep diving little topics, random topics about dogs, which is where today's topic has come in.
I know, I love it. We love diving into random topics slightly connected with the dog world as well, and this one's definitely very connected, and I'm sure loads of people are going to be listening in, trying to figure out some sort of a direction and form their own opinions in and around the hypoallergenic dog. So I suppose it's slightly controversial, but it's really good to get the conversation going, because I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, absolutely. Because what we understand as hypoallergenic, we've all seen bedding advertised as hypoallergenic pillows and all that sort of thing. And it really means hypoallergenic really means less allergy, less allergy kind of giving. It gives you less responses to an allergen. So hypoallergenic pillows and bedding are less likely to trap dust mites. They don't really allow for a good environment for dust mites to live in, and that's the main allergy of dust. Like, so you might have less sneezing and coughing at nighttime if you use those compared to like a feather or down pillow and bedding. They're going to harbor more dust mites, so you're going to have more allergic responses to those. So it just means less. It doesn't mean completely like sterile. It just means a
Mhm.
little bit less. But it's also now been used in the dog world. That word of hypoallergenic is now being used as kind of a marketing thing in the dog world for certain kinds of dogs or certain kinds of like mixes of dogs, and to suggest that they too can also trigger less or like fewer allergic responses. So it's something that um we make the pillows and the bedding and all those hypoallergenic things, right? They're technology, but we didn't really make the dog from a technological standpoint. So it's
Mhm.
interesting. I wanted to find out more about how that how that label was given to those dogs and why people think that they do or do not cause more allergic responses. Because I've heard it both sides. I've heard people saying, "Oh yeah, I got a whatever dog, and I'm not coughing around him where I was with my friend's dog." And then I hear other people saying, "There's no such thing." So I was like, "Well, what's the truth here?" So this is where this has come from.
Yeah, no, and it's a super interesting topic, and I suppose it's going to be really important for lots of people that have specifically come along to listen into this topic, because for sure, if they're looking for a hypoallergenic dog or a so-called one,
Yeah.
then they're likely to have some sort of an allergy, an intolerance, a sensitivity, some sort of kind of, let's say a reaction, be it immune reaction or not, to potentially pets, right?
Yeah, so if you're someone who has an allergic response to an animal, you know yourself, it's the when we have an allergic response, right? Our body reacts to whatever that protein or that particle is that the individual giving off the animal. And so what our body does is it all these antibodies fire up and they go, "Oh my God, danger, we are going to die." So your body will release histamine, which is like a chemical that causes swelling, it causes itching, it causes the nerves to be sensitized to itching. And you might feel constriction in your lungs because all the blood vessels are expanding a little bit. And so we take things called antihistamines, right? When we have an allergy, we take them. And some people will take them regularly if they're allergic to general dust or pollen. And then other people will take them seasonally if it's certain plants only that cause it. And a lot of people will avoid their allergens. But um, yeah, I think if we have allergies to certain animals, it can be really frustrating for if you love animals.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So let's look a little bit into what the science has said, because I know you've done loads of kind of reading on what the scientific community has been looking into recently. Um, I suppose, what are we looking at when we're talking about dog allergies first and foremost? Like, is it the plain and simple, the longer a dog's coat is, the worse it's going to be for allergies, or is it not quite as simple as that?
It's not really as simple as that
Mm.
because so far from the research I've seen, there's at least five different proteins within a dog's biological makeup that could trigger an allergic response in people, and people will generally have differing allergies to different proteins. The most common protein that they're allergic to is the CAN-F1 protein. That's what it's called. And that one is found primarily in like saliva and the dander of a dog. So the dander is like the little tiny skin cells. Some of it's microscopic. You can't even see it. And so when a dog licks itself or licks its coat, the skin cells will also have some of it in there, and it'll be on the surface of the skin or on the fur where the dog is licked. Or even if the dog has just like leaned its face against your sofa, it's going to leave some of that residue on there. And so people will be allergic to that one. That's about 60% of the allergies. But there's some allergies as well that, a very small percentage of people with dog allergies are only allergic to male dogs that are still intact. And
Mhm.
like the mode and mechanism of how all of these work isn't fully understood in all of them, but the main ones, can F1 and F2, would be generally to do with like the mucous membranes, like the saliva the dog is making, or in the dander, of the skin cells on the fur. And of course, then if that's how it works, it doesn't really matter how long or short the dog's coat is. Their skin is still going to be like making dander and shedding that dander the way we shed our skin cells every day. And like our clothes are not covered in skin cells like visibly with our naked eye. We're not like gross beings like
Yeah.
to the naked eye, but we are shedding dander all the time. And so it's the same with dogs. We can't really see it, but it's around if your dog exists. And even like hairless dogs will have this in their saliva and in their fur. It's not necessarily a hairy dog thing. It's
Yeah.
all of them will have it. Yeah.
Exactly, and this tees up actually my next question very, very well because I think one of the studies that you mentioned actually in your initial Instagram post that I kind of picked up on for this chat, I think was talking about they compared allergen levels across different breeds, and
Yeah.
particularly so-called hypoallergenic dogs didn't actually lead to lower allergens at home. So why might that be? I guess it's kind of self-explanatory. There's different allergens in the dogs, right?
Yeah, and also like so the the allergies, like the allergens that are in the dog, some dogs, if they shed less, so some types of dogs that we might label hypoallergenic, like schnauzers and Bijans and like doodly poodly types, um, when they shed dander, because their hair isn't falling out in large amounts relative to like a husky or like a German Shepherd in the house, um, the dander gets trapped against the fur, against the skin. And so it might release less of it into the environment, but there'll be more from contact with your dog. But if you're not really cuddling your dog like too much, or maybe your dog's not a cuddler and likes to just sit in their own bed, you might not be coming into contact with them as much. Um, and it might not be spreading around your home as much. But compared to other dogs, dogs that like Labradors and stuff who might just, it's always falling out at a constant rate throughout your home. And that brings dander with it. So the fur isn't necessarily a problem. It's bringing dander with it into your environment. And so we'll see different rates of that around different homes, even amongst like hypoallergenic dogs, because the the amount of allergen, right? It's a biological thing, it's protein. And so some dogs are born actually producing just a little bit less than others. And why that is, we don't really know. Some studies have shown that Labradors, in the studies that they did, the Labradors that they happened to test had less of it than the poodles they tested, which is, you think if there was a set hypoallergenic breed, that that would be the opposite, right? You think, well, the curly coated poodle who doesn't shed much is going to have less, right? But that's not actually the case. That kind of tells us that the way we're labeling dogs in terms of allergies isn't really working. There's not a cohesive kind of answer to this. If some Labradors are less triggering than others, right? So I think, yeah, different homes will have different amounts because different dogs are individual, and we can't really say how that's going to spread around a home. And then we're different, right? So every home is going to have a different frequency of cleaning or like how they home maintenance, how they upkeep stuff, how much time they spend bathing their dog, brushing their dog, where they brush that animal, where it hangs out. If a dog who might have lots of allergen in their coat lives in the kitchen and he's not allowed in the rest of the house, well then the only way that dander is getting up the stairs and around the home is on your feet or on your clothes. It's not the dog doing it. And
Mhm.
so you might have a really high allergy level dog living in your kitchen, but you're not really triggered as much because it's not in the bedrooms or in the rest of the home where we spend a lot of time. So it's really dog dependent and yeah, individual dependent as well.
Yeah, and isn't it amazing? Like every time you start talking about living beings, it always comes back to it depends, doesn't it? It's like with
It
any
does,
dog
doesn't it?
topic, with
Yeah.
any human topic, it's and it depends because our
It's
world's a bit
always
more
nuanced.
complex. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not as simple as just get an allergy-free dog.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And you mentioned a good point as well that some of the research actually showed higher levels of the primary dog allergen, the CAN-F1, on the coats of hypoallergenic breeds. So it's definitely, and it depends, isn't it? Like the you might have a dog, or you might have a person that has some dog allergy but isn't allergic to a non, you know, typical poster boy hypoallergenic breed, right?
Yeah, and I think what was interesting as well from some of the research that we read about is that different individuals of breeds can have different amounts as well. So you could meet your friends, I don't know, Schnauzer, and go, oh my goodness, I didn't have an allergic reaction and I'm still fine a few days later. There's no delayed reaction. Maybe a Schnauzer's the dog for me, right? And you go out and get one. And then your individual actually produces more than your friend's Schnauzer. And so you become allergic. The allergy persists when you've brought your dog home and you're like, oh no, what's gone wrong? And it's just because individual dogs are just different, right? There's no set code there for schnauzer allergy. Tick.
Which makes it all the more difficult, I suppose, and it makes it difficult even for, you know, like you say, individuals that have allergies to then go out and try and find the
Yeah,
matching
it's
dog
so hard. Yeah,
that's suitable as well for them.
yeah.
And you mentioned something as well about, you know, the grooming and the bathing and all that. Like, do we know how much that makes an impact? I suppose it's really logical to jump to the conclusion anyway that, you know, if things are to do with the skin and to do with, you know, what's kind of on us physically, it probably makes sense that a little bit more bathing, potentially a little bit more moisturizing of the skin could potentially help. But do we really know?
I think some of the research kind of says that the 2 or 3 days after you've like really thoroughly bathed and groomed your dog, there is a big reduction. But then
Mm-hmm.
over those 2 or 3 days, it gradually ramps up again because your skin is going to regenerate, right? Your skin is going to start producing oils and dander again, even if you've washed them off temporarily. And a lot of the the allergens that we are exposed to is in our environment beyond our individual dog. It's in our home. And so you could scrub your dog on a Sunday, but if your house is still the same, you're going to have still allergies in the environment. And for a
Mm-hmm.
couple of days, the spread of them might be reduced. But if they're still there, they're still there. And your dog is going to just start shedding again and producing oils and dander and all of that. And so, like, the bathing and the grooming, yeah, it does make a little bit of a difference initially for a very short period of time. There's actually your environmental management that's going to make a bigger difference in terms of the spread. And also, like, if you're brushing your dog, if you're brushing your dog in your house, you're just spreading it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're better off brushing your dog outside. Um, but yeah, grooming can make a difference. And like shorter coats, like if you're able to brush your dog every day, you're going to be getting closer to the skin, right? So you're going to be brushing off some of that dander. And so that can make a bit of a difference, certainly. And I do think, you know, it's good to make sure you're staying on top of your dog's grooming requirements anyway. But the other thing is though, if you're washing your dog, so every 2 or 3 days, you're starting to see like dander spread again because the skin is just regenerating and stuff. You can't wash your dog that frequently because
Mm-hmm.
if your dog starts to get itchy or dry skin, or is sensitive to that constant bathing, their skin is just going to get like inflamed and red, which causes more shedding. So it's like a vicious cycle. You need to be very careful with managing that. So it's you're better off kind of looking at your own home and going, okay, where are the dog areas? Where are the non-dog areas? Can we make like bedrooms non-dog areas? Because the bedroom is where we spend the longest period uninterrupted every day. So that's where like you are going to be breathing in more of the stuff. And so you might have a bigger reaction waking up in the morning, for example, sneezing or coughing or having a bit of a runny nose. It might be indicative of we probably need to do a bit more like deep hoovering in here or getting rid of carpets or something in order to improve that. Um, but yeah, that's
It sounds
unfortunately
really,
grooming is not
yeah.
necessarily the answer.
And yeah, and like you say, it can be part of a management strategy,
Yeah,
but
absolutely. Yeah,
it's not the only thing. And I think
yeah,
potentially from everything we've said until now, it sounds like, you know, there's going to be no one silver bullet, you know, unless you decide not to get a dog at all, and go for a different type of pet. Then, you know, you might have more success with ponies or something, but otherwise it's going to probably be, you know, probably multifaceted. Then you're going to be talking about like managing what parts of the home the dog goes to, careful selection of the dog where possible, and like grooming, yes, being part of the solution but not being
Yeah.
the one silver bullet that makes everything okay. um and I suppose that probably brings me then to another question about, like, what responsibility do we have as a dog community, and how should we be approaching handling, number one, the allergy concerns in the first place, and number two, when we come across people that are, trying to match themselves, their families to a dog, how can we kind of like try to help to facilitate this?
Yeah, I think as a community we have to remember that it's not the breed or the type, it's the individual first and
Mhm.
foremost. So the dog that you're looking at is an individual dog who's going to have individual production of different things, and that we don't know. Does that fluctuate over a dog's life? We don't really know. So we don't really have a lot of the answers yet as to what's going to happen in the future with people, and our allergies change throughout our lives. But I suppose what we could do is maybe look at if a family is in like looking to adopt a dog and their one of their family members has maybe a bit of an allergy to dogs or has displayed an allergy before, maybe doing multiple visits before that dog goes home with them, and like maybe emphasizing the importance of, that their allergies could have a delayed reaction. So sometimes you might be exposed to something, and then the next day you're a little bit more wheezy and coughing and all that, getting the exposure to the allergen that way. Um, and then talking about environmental management. So if we're rehoming a dog from a rescue, for example, and we don't know how we're going to respond, um, once you've done the multiple visits, once everyone's on board with all of it, and the family has the okay from their medical professional, because their medical team is going to understand them way more than the rehoming or the dog community is. Um, that maybe a part of the adoption plan is that we have a settling in plan for the new dog, and the new dog's confined to one area in the house, and it's all managed that way, that that's the dog space, and we're going to assess how everyone's doing in that picture over the first few weeks and days, to see how everyone's getting on, if it's been so far so good. And then that should be part of this approach of helping the family and the new dog merge their lives together, um,
Mhm.
even if someone does have a bit of an allergy. And like you could foster first as well. Fostering could be part of the written into that plan. So it could be like weeks of visits, multiple visits, a sleepover here and there, and then expand it to we're going to foster him for a few weeks to maybe turning into a forever foster, depending on how all it goes. So that could be one way that we approach it. That we do it as breed rather or as individual rather than breed, and we help people integrate it slowly to see if it's going to work, rather than putting a new dog into a new home straight away and then hearts getting broken days or weeks later when someone's just not coping.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like there's so many other benefits obviously that are going to go along with an approach like this. It's because as we all know, unfortunately, the relationship doesn't always work out for so many other reasons. And it's I think this approach kind of sets you up for success regardless. And
Yeah,
I suppose if you're throwing an allergy or some sort of an immune response in on top of, kind of potentially quite a stressful time for everyone involved, a slow and gradual set yourself up for success kind of approach would definitely
yeah,
sound like it would make a lot of
yeah.
sense.
And we do that for new dogs anyway. The settling in
Yeah,
period is so long, as we've seen in your previous episodes with like
yeah,
Anne talking about settling in new dogs. So we know it takes ages anyway. So let's take it slowly for everybody so
yeah,
that everyone gets a chance to find their feet and figure out if it's going to work
yeah, yeah.
long term.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And talking in and around, the myths then as well, because I'm sure you come across loads of them in your work as a trainer. Um, what are the biggest myths you come across with the hypoallergenic breeds?
I suppose the biggest one would be that, oh, it's labeled hypoallergenic, therefore it's the dog for me. It's not going to trigger my allergies. And we know that allergic responses differ from person to person, and dog from dog. So having that kind of black and white rigidity of it is, therefore it will be fine kind of thing.
Hmm.
Whereas, you know, as well as that, the word hypoallergenic, it's real, I don't know, it's real medical or something. It's real like, yeah, I feel like because it has this kind of medical authoritative kind of vibe to it, I
Hmm.
wonder do people take it more, it almost inspires that it's been like tested, right? So because like all that hypoallergenic products, the technologies like filters and all that, they're all tested in a laboratory and released to for use based on their test results. But like the word hypoallergenic being applied to dogs, they haven't been. Like they're not a real mass scale of we'll produce this and then release it to the public. And so it kind of gives this false sense of safety that like I'm safe to get this because that label's on it.
And
Does that
you're
make sense?
so right. And take transforming this from dogs to dog food, because when you're speaking with a canine nutritionist, I'm
Yes.
sorry, we either go to food or to poo very quickly.
But you're
So
right. I can see the marketing of food as well.
it's not a protected term even in products, so when you go into the pet shop and you see something that says hyperallergenic, if you flip around the back, sometimes you see things like we've only used one animal protein as the protein source for this food. So often you see on these as well that it's chicken, like the number one food allergen in dogs. So without trying to kind of completely steer this conversation in
No,
one
you're right
in
though.
that
Yeah.
direction, hypoallergenic, like you say, it's only kind of it's a philosophy really to say we've given it a good shot at helping you out here, but it's not necessarily guaranteed a-okay. Now there's that's just one example, and that's one experience that I had of going into a pet shop. Obviously there are different kind of different examples out there where I'm sure that it would genuinely have a hypoallergenic reaction for your dog, or have that kind of value for your dog. So it just depends, doesn't it? And it's like you
Yeah.
said, it's all about the individual. So matching the human individual to the dog individual is going to be really, really important.
Yeah. And like we're all suckers for a good anecdote as well. So like anecdotes, like the anecdote will kind of, well, my friend has one and it's fine. And that's true. That could be true. Like absolutely. People are like some people are reactive less to certain types of dogs. But it's the data, even though that's true in society on like individual levels, the overall data isn't showing that these dogs or those kinds of dogs are. So it's important to remember though, even if you've had a positive experience with a certain kind of dog, that it doesn't necessarily apply to all of the
Yeah,
those dogs or all of the people. And that's really hard just sometimes for us to understand, to get our head around, because we're like, but it's fine for us, and it feels so true. It feels so like I don't react to poodles or whatever it is. But it's not applicable on a grand scale, on a mass scale. And so the data is often very different to what we feel is our experience. And we see that for
yeah,
everything. It's not just dogs, right? We see that in all sorts of facets of life. And so it's um just remembering that like just because someone said that they had a good experience or that you feel you've had a certain thing, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to apply to everybody. And
yeah,
that's
that's
really hard
so
when you're
true.
living that. Yeah,
So true. Yeah, just because
I
someone
know.
decided to cross a Labrador and a poodle and kind of, with good intentions, I'm sure, and market them as hypoallergenic because they once heard that poodles have waxy coats.
Mm.
Like it's and just because you don't react to it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a safe dog, for a safe bet for anyone that has
Yeah.
an allergy in the house. Yeah. And do you think that dogs labeled as hypoallergenic affect how people? Well, we've already discussed that how people affect how people select their dogs. Sorry, but
Yeah.
also how they train and they treat their dogs in general.
Yeah, I think when we see that label of hypoallergenic, or we go out of our way to look for one because the risk of allergy is so high, and I get it because in a home, your kids' health, your family's health, they're like the number one thing. We might go out of our way to get a dog that has that label, and I think sometimes that label might trick us into thinking that they are family friendly, right? Because hypoallergenic, they're not going to cause my kids to have allergies, or they're not going to cause me to be wheezing every day. And so we think, well, they're family friendly, right? And actually, a lot of the dog breeds that we would label with that term would be dogs who are energetic, right? They're going to have lots of energy, and they're going to have certain needs. And, for example, like Labradoodles, as you mentioned, Labradors and Poodles are big energy dogs. They're not going to be cool with you going to a 9 to 5 every day and then just going for a long walk on the weekends. They're going to want stuff happening every day. And like even like the smaller breeds as well, Bijans and all those cute little fluffies, they're going to need exercise, like playtime. Like young dogs as well, they're going to have so many needs beyond just being not causing you to sneeze every day. So you're gonna have to think about the individual breed as well when looking at a dog. And I think sometimes we get dogs that may not be the perfect match from a wider behavior kind of like view, but we've gotten them because they're better for us in another way. And I think, yeah, that might then run into trouble later on when we realize that our cute, cuddly little dog is suddenly like needs 5K a day to be happy, and needs tons of chewing, and needs lots of outlets and enrichment and all the things. And I think that sometimes can be a bit of a shock to the system then when we realize that, oh dear, we've gotten a dog that maybe isn't as gentle with the kids straight off the bat. All of those things. I think from a behavior standpoint, I think we kind of leave that behind when we see certain terms. And I think we need to remember that these individuals are um, living beings who have certain needs, and that we
Yeah,
have to make sure we're meeting them.
definitely. And it's such a good point and so important. I think it can't be stressed enough. Like obviously on one hand, there's, the individual versus the breed. Breed isn't going to describe exactly how your individual
Yeah,
dog's behavior
exactly.
is, but there are indications, and we did specifically purposefully breed dogs for a job. And
Yeah.
when you go back to the example of the Labradoodle, like Labradors and poodles were both bred for hunting, and like you say, high energy jobs, also very water intensive jobs as well, because they're both water retrievers. So the fact that 2 years down the line your teenage labradoodles jumping into every pond or anything that could come close to it, like a mucky puddle, like shouldn't surprise you one bit. Because you selected something that was kind of built that way. And I think it's kind of the same, like if you look back at the guardian breeds, for example, that I was speaking about a couple of weeks ago with Susie White. Like a lot of them were made to be fairly standoffish. Like your Bernese is made for literally hanging off the side of a mountain in close to Bern, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And like they're not there for the cuddles as much at all
Yeah.
as you'd imagine. So
Yeah.
yeah, knowing like a little bit about what you're signing up for is so right, and it doesn't necessarily mean that because they look like a teddy they're going to act like a teddy when they grow up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, why doesn't my Bernedoodle cuddle with me? It's like, I'm not gonna think about that one. It's luck of the draw.
Exact
Yeah. So it's
exactly.
yeah. So it might come with fewer allergic responses, but the behaviors that you might get also are a little bit of a lottery too. And just being aware of that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And I suppose, like we mentioned, that there's been some really interesting studies out there. But talking about scientific research in general, because we can never have enough scientific research. What kind of like scientific research would you like to see in the field of dog allergies, so that we can kind of understand this a little bit better?
Well, I suppose if you think about the believing like grooming and stuff would solve the allergy. issue in a home. That's one of the beliefs that we often hear is, oh, we just get them groomed regularly, that, that it'll be a reduction in the dander. Um, wouldn't it be great if there was like a product or something we could like rub into their fur once a week or something, and it would just
Mm,
reduce how much dander is, or it neutralizes it, or the protein or something you could feed them that wouldn't hurt a dog. It would be welfare friendly, but it would create less of the allergen, and then you could
yeah,
have your dog in your home and not be worried because whatever additive you're putting in their food is helping with it. Or I suppose if we understood allergies a bit more, I think if we just had some more research in general so that we could understand, first of all, what we're reacting to, what is it that we're responding to with certain individuals over others, right? And what do those dogs have that others don't? And if there was a non-invasive way to test a dog's production level of it, for example, to be able to add to like a rehoming list of low CAN-S1 protein in saliva, less allergy triggers from this dog, or something like, right, like, but then we don't know how much that fluctuates in life as well. So that would be
yeah,
it's hard. So with something like that, where you could nearly add it, like tack it on as a marketing thing,
yeah,
because it's being used as marketing now, right? Already, it's already being used as a marketing thing. So at least
yeah,
if we had some truth behind it, like a little saliva test we could do that says, oh, he's producing way less. He produces the same as whatever. And so people then would be able to look at the hypoallergenic dogs in rescue versus the ones that have higher levels. And if they knew their own ones, so say if someone knew that they were highly allergic to the CAN-F2 protein, but they found a dog with low levels of that, with higher levels of CAN-F1, they know that, oh, he's actually fine. He might be okay. Let's go meet him and hang out with him, and see if we can adopt him, kind of thing. So I don't know. That's kind of where my head goes. I'm like, is there something we could either rub on them or feed them, or like
yeah.
some way of testing
Or
us, to find the right match? And yeah,
I was
something
gonna
like that
say,
maybe.
if I was
Yeah.
gonna say if we could figure out how to turn off the allergen in our cells, the allergic reaction, because it's
Yeah.
an immune response on our side,
Mm.
and presumably. I'm taking a step kind of to the side here now. I'm thinking like this could be have potential for all allergens then as well. Like with any like a
Yeah.
nut allergy, and all sorts. So like it would be absolutely
Yeah.
amazing if we could like figure out how to switch off, these incorrect kind of attacks from within ourselves, from our
I
immune
know.
systems.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Our immune system's just, it's like hearing someone clear their throat and then we go and give the Heimlich. It's just, that's how stupid the response is. It's just like, it's such an overreaction from our bodies to something so innocuous. But yeah, when we, or if yeah, if we could eat something or have something like a pill form that would help us turn off that specific thing, it would be so good. But then it would open up the doors for a lot of individuals to get homes. If allergies were the only thing holding you back. Wouldn't it be
exactly.
lovely? Yeah.
Yeah. No doubt there is a solution kind of just on the horizon, and I think it's going to be
Yeah.
found by accident. They'll be looking for something else, and we'll find some sort of a breakthrough in the area, because like you say, allergies is just such a huge topic for everyone, really. Yeah,
Yeah. Could you imagine? Magic pill grows new feet, but also takers aren't allergic to dogs. I'll have
I'll,
10
I'll
feet,
take
please.
it. Exactly, exactly. Be absolutely fine. Oh my
Yeah.
God, such an amazing topic, and such an area that like we need to know a lot more about. But I love the content that you've brought with you, and the we'll definitely link some of those studies as well in the show notes, as well as links to you.
Yeah. People can read
Um,
through.
Really, really appreciate your time coming on and chatting. It's been an absolute pleasure as always. Thank you very
Great.
much,
Thanks
Niamh.
so much for having me. It's been really nice. And I certainly enjoyed figuring out all of this stuff and reading about it. I feel like I hope that everyone gets to understand all of that so that they can make better choices for them and their dogs.
Yeah,
'Cause that's what we want.
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much once again, and see
No
you very
worries.
soon. And once again, a huge thank you to Niamh for coming on and sharing such valuable insights into what is a pretty complex topic. You can find loads more information about what Niamh gets up to at Polite Paws Dog Training in the show notes, where you can find loads of links. There you can also find, of course, loads of links to Ruby Reese and to dognutrition.ie. We would all love if you'd go ahead and support us on those social media channels, and maybe even consider booking in for a service, or indeed heading on over and checking out the range that we stock at Ruby Reese. We would really appreciate it, because we do put quite a lot of effort into these podcasts, and we appreciate our guests coming on and spending their time as well. So share some of the love. If you've enjoyed some of the content of this podcast, please also feel free to share this with people that you think it might benefit. It would be hugely appreciated, and that's how this podcast grows and gets to a larger audience and can help more people. So that will be so appreciated as well. We wish you a great or further continued start into January and into the new year. If we can help in any way, if we can bring more topics to the forefront, please do let us know. And otherwise, we look forward to welcoming you back for another podcast episode in just 2 weeks' time.